Well, we're on the doorstep of the weekend, and we are enjoying the blessing of the onshore flow with the temperatures that cooled off today. But you didn't have to go far to find 90-degree plus highs, and there's actually some severe weather going on just to our south. We're going to take a look at that and a peek through the weekend, and maybe we'll take a few guesses on the 4th of July. All of that on this Thursday night, Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And you can support the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. Shop on Amazon using our referral link. And that link, you can find it on the descriptive of this podcast right under the title on YouTube. Just search and shop for whatever it is you're going to get. And Amazon throws us back a little bit of coin for sending you there. It's an easy, quick, and cost-free way to support the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast and keep the live stream commercial-free. And Tempest by WeatherFlow. The revolutionary Tempest weather system is yours for the asking. You'll be on the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link for this is pinned to the top of the chat board. It's also underneath the title of the podcast on YouTube. Use that coupon code Summer 2025 because you know what? If you do, you will get
10% off. And anytime you can get 10% off anything, that's great.
Yeah, well, it works for me. So, yes, very exciting day here in North Georgia as people witnessed the fireball coming out of the sky, wondering what in the name of heaven it was. And the general consensus seems to be, Mr. Torreo, that it was a meteorite of some sort.
Well, there's a report that I forgot now. I don't have it in front of me, but there was someplace right about the time this appeared in the sky, 12:25 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Shortly thereafter, there was a building where something, a rock, it was said came through the roof and landed, embedded in the floor. And so it could very well be that it was a meteorite. Now, people who saw this, and in some cases, some described it as bright as the full moon, or even as bright as the sun in full daylight. They're probably saying stuff, this thing must have been a gigantic, but kinetic energy is so important when you're making calculations of these things. You don't need a very large object. When you're moving at about 20 to 30 miles per second through our atmosphere, and the heat that is caused by the object in question rushing through the atmosphere, crashing into our atmosphere and rubbing up against all of those air molecules and atoms, heating everything up so within the fraction of a heartbeat, so to speak. This probably was no bigger than, a ping pong ball or a baseball, but it was bright enough to make itself plainly visible in the sky during the daytime, right after the beginning of summer. The sun was highest in the sky, for goodness sake, as high as it could possibly go when this thing appeared in the sky across the Carolinas, parts of Georgia, Tennessee. So if you saw it, and there were a number of people who did, you saw quite a sight. You were out at just the right time and looking up just the right moment to see this amazing spectacle.
Yeah, and another spectacle was the nice cool air that got down here behind those thunderstorms I had last night. Low this morning here was 63.9. And the high today was 87.8 per my Tempest by WeatherFlow weather station. And we did get a little bit of rain here. 784 lightning strikes were recorded today, but I only got 18/100ths of an inch of rain. And that's opposed to yesterday when we had 886 lightning strikes and I got 1.12 inches of rain in 66 minutes.
That's pretty darn good.
Yeah, I thought so.
Quite an intensity.
You cooled off nicely today.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the posts on the chat board. Tom Contino, just getting back for a moment to what I was just talking about, he was asking, was it a meteor or a meteorite? What is the difference? Okay, so when the object is out in space, hurtling through the solar system on its own, it's a meteoroid. When it crashes through our atmosphere, and when you see it in the sky, we call it a meteor. And in fact, a meteor is simply the visible manifestation of the meteoroid. You're not actually seeing the object in question when it's streaking across the sky. You're seeing the incandescent trail that's caused by the object streaking through the atmosphere at high speeds, the ionization, so to speak, of the atmosphere, heating things up and causing that streak of light to appear in the sky. As I said, it's the visible manifestation of the meteoroid. When you look out the window, Joe, and you see, let's say, a bunch of trees out there, and if it's like 30, 40, 50 mile per hour winds, those trees are going to be going back and forth, swaying back and forth. And you'll say to somebody who might be in the same room with you, my goodness, look at the wind. Well, the swaying of the trees is, you can't see the wind. If you were out there and there was nothing around, you just, felt the wind on your face or whatever. You can't see the wind, but when you see the trees swaying back and forth, you're seeing the visible manifestation of the wind. The meteor streaking through the atmosphere, not evident to your eye, is creating that incandescent streak. And so that is the visible manifestation of the meteoroid. And when it lands on the ground, if it lands on the ground, if it happens to make it all the way down to the surface, and you can pick it up like as a rock, or sometimes many times larger, like what you see in the museums, sometimes these huge chunks of nickel, stone, or iron, when it makes it all the way down to the ground, that is what you call a meteorite. So, meteoroid, that's out in space. Meteor when it's streaking through the atmosphere, and meteorite when it lands on the ground. And apparently, this thing that caused that fireball this afternoon did make it all the way to the ground, crashed through somebody's house or some building, and became a meteorite.
All right. I wonder what Superman would have done.
Super. They did a whole episode about, I think it was, the name of the episode was called Panic in the Sky.
Right.
And an asteroid was putting the Earth at risk for something or other, and Superman had to fly up. And when he flew up the first time and collided with it, he ended up with amnesia. He came back, he didn't know who he was. Um, and that adds an additional funny thing about the Superman episodes. There were a number of episodes where Clark did not have his glasses on.
Right.
And
You
and
think
that,
somebody would have figured that out?
yeah, I mean here, Jimmy Olsen put Clark Kent in bed, because he crashed through the shower, and he tells he calls up Lois Lane and Perry White. They come running over to Clark's apartment, and Lois says, "Jimmy, all that glass." He said, "He must be the luckiest person alive, not a scratch." And he doesn't have his glasses on. They're looking for Superman to knock because of the asteroid, and they're looking at him, no glasses, and it doesn't strike them
I
that
know.
here's
You have to
here's Superman, for God's sake.
you have to suspend a lot of logic when you watch some of these shows because they stuff like that just makes absolutely no sense. Anyway, welcome tonight to everybody on the chat board, and welcome to those of you who are lurking in the background tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, albeit in much cooler conditions today, we hope. So subscribe to my YouTube channel, turn your notifications on so you don't miss us. We're here Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. No changes in the schedule this weekend, no changes in the schedule for next week, at least so far. And of course, if you like the show, hit the like button. Joe Rayo is going to be doing Rayo's radars tonight because we do have some busy weather just to the south. And I should like to point out
Yes.
that I'm going to bring up the hazards map if I can get my mouse to move to work again. There we go. And it was very interesting today. Even though if you go by the wind shift, the front was actually down somewhere in southern Delaware, as everybody had an east wind, but there was uh, still a wide range in temperatures. It didn't get out of the 60s at all in southeastern New England and in eastern Long Island. The 70s to the west, New York City, northern New Jersey, and so on. Southern New Jersey, southern Pennsylvania, and points south did make it up back to 90 today. Not much above 90. It was more than that when you get down to Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. But just looking at some of the current temperatures, for example, Washington's at 85. Baltimore with a north-northwest wind is at 86. So that's kind of where the frontal boundary is, somewhere in there. 75 in Philadelphia right now, so they're down because they were down up at 90, so they're down 15. Tom's River, where they've got winds are gusting to about 15 to 20 miles an hour, even 20 to 25 along the New Jersey shore. But the current temperatures right now 70 at LaGuardia, 66 at Islip. We're looking at 63 in Hartford. Uh, Worcester's at 64, Springfield 62. So a really nice cool off. But now you got clouds to deal with, and we're probably going to see temperatures struggling. Bring up the satellite loop. Uh, there's quite a bit of cloud cover from New York City north and east, and you can see the lightning strikes tonight that are going on just to the south, right near where that front is, and point southward across Virginia into Maryland and southeastern Pennsylvania, and probably even skimming southern New Jersey. And by the way, the echoes when Joe brings up the radars in a second, you're going to see that these thunderstorms are moving in all different directions. It's just really bizarre. And also, by the way, you want to point out that we do have a rather strong line of thunderstorms running up from northern Wisconsin southwestward through Iowa into Kansas and Oklahoma. And that's where another frontal boundary lies and has been sitting there, producing some heavy thunderstorms. And we've got thunderstorms along the Gulf Coast. A little bit of disturbed weather in the Caribbean, although I didn't check. I don't think there's anything on the tropical weather outlook. And nice and quiet out in the western states. Severe thunderstorm watches are up for south central and southeastern Pennsylvania and even some points further north. Flash flood watches go all the way up to the New York state line. And then the severe thunderstorm watches include southernmost New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. They are up until 10 o'clock tonight. We still have some heat advisories in the Ohio and Tennessee Valley down into parts of the south. And we've got a severe thunderstorm watch and a waning tornado watch that is up in parts of Wisconsin down through Iowa and in through northwestern Missouri. So if you'd like, Mr.
What's that area down in southern Arizona? Is that excessive heat
That's
watch or
an extreme heat watch, I believe.
okay? All right. I saw an interesting story. Maybe some of you saw it on the CBS Evening News with Maurice Dubois. And the story was about the cactus in Arizona. And they say that the cactus is literally now dropping dead because of the fact that over the last 20 years, the heat has been far more than at any time in recent years. And not even the cactus has been able to withstand it. And there are a number of them that are, I don't remember the exact type of cactus, but they're dying now because of the fact that it's just gotten too hot, even for the cactus or the cacti
Cacti,
to
yes.
withstand. So it's kind of sad,
It is.
what's going on down there.
All right, get your radars going here. You're all set.
All right, very good. We'll
And while you bring them up, I just sort of point out we've got a cluster of severe thunderstorm warnings in southeast Pennsylvania and some flash flood warnings there, and also a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings around Baltimore and even around Washington D.C. And there's also a cell that's moving into near Staten Island, but that looks like it's weakening now. And of course, as I said, has got the radars up. Scott Briller hitting super chat tonight. Thank you, Scott. He said the high and low temperature in the lower 48 today. The highest was 113 in Death Valley. No big deal. And 23 in Peter Sinks, Utah. The two locations that usually have the high and low temperatures for the extremes for the summer months. So have at it, Joe.
All right, well, we'll start with the New York radar, and you can see that there are showers that are moving across a broad area of Connecticut. I apologize once again. We have that funky situation with a few frames that are occurring, but not as bad as last night. You can also see that there are some showers that apparently are moving in from New Jersey and over, Joe just mentioned, the vicinity of Staten Island and Brooklyn. but that doesn't look like it's overly potent. And also other showers that have moved across New Jersey from eastern Pennsylvania and then kind of dissipating as it moves further along. In fact, a little bit of that breaking off, or a little piece of that, is what is now affecting, again, Staten Island and Brooklyn. And down here, right here in the area where we have Pennsylvania really, protruding more into central New Jersey, there are some showers. I'm going to take a look further to the south. This is Dover, Delaware, Ellendale, and you can see that in some cases this activity that's moving across southeastern Pennsylvania, now moving into northernmost sections of Delaware, pretty potent. I would have to say that we probably are dealing with some rather significant, strong, gusty winds, along with some heavy downpours associated with that area that, again, is now moving into northern Delaware for the most part, and further south and east down into Maryland. There's some activity going on in the vicinity, just to the north, it would appear, of the District of Columbia. Let's go further a bit to the west. I'm going to check out, let's see here, Charleston, West Virginia. And you can see that there are showers here across portions of West Virginia. Joe mentioned about the fact that the showers are moving in all different directions. These showers affecting the lower end of West Virginia apparently are moving or drifting on a path to the north here. And meanwhile, while all that is happening, we have more showers into southern sections of Ohio. This area here doesn't appear to be particularly strong, but when the loop finishes off here, there's an area right here in the panhandle area of West Virginia. That's the area just between Ohio and Pennsylvania, where there's some pretty significant thunderstorms that are going on. In fact, if we let's check out the Pittsburgh radar. Probably have a much better view from Pittsburgh and Coriopolis of those showers. Look, keep your eye right around here where the cursor is, and you can see, yeah, right there, you can see the area that I'm referring to, not too far from where Wheeling, West Virginia is, and that area again rather potent, moving again from Ohio and on into Pennsylvania. We do want to check that area that Joe mentioned out west in the vicinity of, here we have La Crosse, Wisconsin, and you can see that broad area looks like of moderate to heavy rain and embedded lightning and thunder here and in here, and also into the adjacent states of Minnesota and Iowa. There is some significant activity. They're mostly moving from west to east. If we look at the Des Moines radar, you can see a couple of broken lines of showers and storms crossing through central and east central Iowa. And if we go further south on into Missouri, well, let's check out what St. Louis is indicating. This is St. Charles, St. Louis. They're not indicating much of anything. Let's maybe I went a little bit too far to the south. This is Quad City, Davenport, Iowa. And you can see, again, this broken line of significant rain and shower and thunderstorm activity moving again across central and east central Iowa, and that area right here in central Iowa, moving along, and it really looks rather intense. So we want to go for just one more view here. Further south, we're going into Atlanta, Peachtree City. Here are more showers and storms which actually affected Mr. Chiaffi over the last hour or two. These are moving from northeast to southwest. In fact, this one group here looks like it nailed Atlanta about an hour and a half ago, and has now moved to the southwest of Atlanta, and more showers moving down from western sections of North Carolina and western sections of South Carolina as well. So there are showers, and as Joe mentioned, they're all over the southeastern United States and across the Midwest and plains. And again, depending upon where you're looking, moving in all different directions, from northwest to southeast, from west to east, from northeast to southwest. Again, all dependent upon what part of the globe or what part of the country you're looking at. Joe?
And the Storm Prediction Center today, these storms are playing out in the zones that they've indicated from North Georgia northeastward up through western North Carolina, cutting across Virginia, Maryland, into southeastern and south central Pennsylvania. The other slight risk area is from northwest Missouri and Iowa to Wisconsin and southeastern Minnesota. There have been a few spin ups in Wisconsin. I did notice a couple of tornado warnings there, and that's where we had a 5% tornado risk. Now, tomorrow, it's a slight risk in the Dakotas and north central Nebraska, and then this sort of weird area of marginal risk for isolated severe thunderstorms up to, except not the west coast of Florida, but central and east going north, south to north, much of Georgia, except the east southeast part, Alabama, the eastern and southern part, Mississippi, the southern part. Then it goes into eastern Tennessee and western North Carolina, into Virginia, and kind of noses itself up into western Pennsylvania. Then another area of marginal risk, southeast Michigan, northwest Ohio, and northeast Indiana. They've gotten so good at this stuff that they can, you used to get these sort of broad brushed areas that they would just have covering large areas of geography. They really have to do a good job of, SPC does, of narrowing things down. And a 2% tornado spin up risk in the Dakotas for tomorrow. And then for Saturday into Sunday, we have a marginal risk for severe weather in northeastern Virginia, central and eastern Maryland, Delaware, all of New Jersey to New York City, up the Hudson Valley, going all the way up into upstate New York, north of Albany, and west to in Pennsylvania to at least I-81, and and I-81 all the way up. So we could use that as the westernmost flank, and that's going to come with a cold front that's going to be coming through on Saturday. As far as rainfall is concerned, again, remember it's convection season, so you give a brush of what you think the rain's going to be, and always understand that in some of these heavier thunderstorms, you could wind up with 50%, 100% higher, 200% higher, sometimes even more. But in general, it's a broad brushed area of a half inch to an inch and a quarter. And then you've got these patches where we're seeing an inch and a half plus, including for me, western North Carolina, southwest Virginia, an inch and a half plus in parts of eastern West Virginia, a small area in western New York, as well as in north central New York. And then you've got an inch and a half plus across northern Wisconsin, on up into the upper peninsula of Michigan. Obviously, some of that's happening tonight. And another patch that's in southwest Missouri, northeast Oklahoma, northwest Arkansas, southeast Kansas of an inch and a half plus. So tomorrow is onshore flow day. I think, Joe, you're going to see probably a lot of clouds and an east wind, and temperatures in many locations are going to have a tough time getting above 70. The further south you are, maybe you got a shot. Further north and northeast you are, you don't. And then on Saturday, it's a south wind as the high goes out. But then here comes Mr. Cold Front with some showers and thunderstorms during the afternoon and evening hours. And this is why SPC has put up the risk. And that shower and thunderstorm activity goes up and down the East Coast, from Maine all the way down to Georgia and Florida. Once that goes by, though, I think Sunday looks okay to me. It looks pretty dry. We're kind of in a weak pressure pattern, but it doesn't look like we'll have much going on. And we'll probably see temperatures start to warm up again on Sunday, maybe mid to upper 80s, warm spots getting to 90. And then next week, I'm thinking there's some storms approaching on Monday that kind of, like the worst of it goes across Pennsylvania southeast toward Maryland, and then that goes away. And then Tuesday we got a cold front, and that produces probably some showers and storms. But I think once that goes out, the rest of the week, and particularly Thursday and Friday next week, Friday, 4th of July, looks like a really delightful day if the European is right. Nice high, it comes down in Michigan and over Pennsylvania. The thicknesses are actually pretty reasonable. So 3rd of July and the 4th of July look like right now, Joe, that we could be optimistic about it.
I would agree with you. I think it does look like a very nice weather pattern shaping up just in time for the big Independence Day holiday, which will be a week from tomorrow. That's something that I know that a lot of people hope for and look forward to, especially those who gather in Manhattan to watch the Macy's fireworks display coming up. And to me, that's the opening of a new season, so to speak. Macy's, of course, is behind the July 4th fireworks, and they're also in there with their annual Thanksgiving Day parade. We're at we're at the fulcrum, if you will. The year is about to tip to the other side. We've had the first half of the year. Of course, the midpoint I think is July 2nd. But once we get to July the 4th, we begin to see now everything taking shape for the second half of the year coming up. Hard to believe. It seems to me like it was only a month or two ago that we were still talking about cold and snow and whatever. Here
Yeah.
we are now in summertime, and before you know it, Joe, the leaves will be falling, and we'll be back into the pattern of Halloween and Thanksgiving and Christmas, and boom, we'll be right back into winter again.
I'm noticing on the upper air, at least from looking at the European, uh, there's no dominant ridge that's building. It pops up, it gets flattened, it pops up, it gets flattened, and we seem to be getting into a pattern where we're getting troughs coming down into the northeast. So here's one for Tuesday, and then kind of strengthens as we go into Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I mean, if that setup is correct like this, it would certainly suggest a nice bout of at least a couple of days of sunshine and low humidity, which
Yeah,
would be
you'd love to
nice.
see that, especially in July. That is
Yeah.
something you don't see very often, is the upper level, the 500 millibar pattern, showing that sharp turn out of the northwest. I
Yeah,
mean,
and
more often than not.
no real ridging building in the east over the next 2 weeks. Something starts out in the Gulf states and then kind of migrates to New Mexico, Colorado, Arizona, back over there. But the flow from Canada seems to be unusually busy for the first 10 days of July. So at least that you could take comfort if that is correct, that if it does get hot for a day or so, it won't be anything crazy like we just had, and the heat doesn't last, and we get some of these breaks with humidity. Just have to get through the next 5 or 6 weeks with the peak of the summer, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
Right, and in fact, when we get to, let's see, first, second, third, next Thursday, the Earth will be at aphelion, which is the point in its orbit farthest from the sun, believe it or not, 94.5 million miles away. And the sun is actually, appears because of that distance, 3.5% smaller and about 7% dimmer on the 3rd of July as opposed to when we were at perihelion around New Year's Day of this year. So we're actually closer to the sun in January and farthest from the sun in July. Yet a lot of people probably think it's the other way around because of all of the heat. Of course, we deal with the fact that the seasons are caused not by the distance of the Earth from the sun, but by the tilt of our axis. And at this time of the year, the northern hemisphere is tilted more toward the direction of the sun, and that is what makes the days longer. That is what makes the temperatures hotter, as opposed to what we were seeing 6 months 6 months ago when we were closest to the sun. And I had an earth science teacher, Joe. I went to junior high school 101, Henry Bruckner Junior High School in the Bronx, and my earth science teacher, Mr. Schemberg, Saul Schemberg, told us that since we were farthest from the sun in July and closest in January, it meant that the summers are actually cooler here in the northern hemisphere, and the winters are warmer in the northern hemisphere as opposed to the southern hemisphere. But what Mr. Schemberg did not take into account is the northern hemisphere has so much more land area as opposed to the southern hemisphere, so that the land heats up and actually causes our summers to be hotter in the northern hemisphere as opposed to the southern hemisphere summers, which are a bit cooler. So it's a little confusing, but In
Yeah.
any case, it's hard to believe next Thursday we will be farthest from the sun, and that the sun actually appears about 7% dimmer because of that 3.5 million mile further distance from the sun as opposed to where we were at 6 months ago in orbit when we were closest to the sun. Think about that on the next broiling hot day that we have here.
Yeah. It's all about your axis, Joe.
Yeah,
Right? Thriller Jeopardy time! And we're still on this theme of hottest temperatures ever in the following states. And we've been going in alphabetical order. So tonight we start with the state where the wind comes blowing down the plain, Oklahoma.
I would have to say
Oklahoma, Joe.
I'm going to say 120.
Well, you take the fun out of the game, Mr. Rayo, because you got it on the nose, so you can ring the bell for your person.
Oh, thank you. Ring the bell for
Okay,
me.
so
Ring a ding a ding.
stop the presses, folks. On to the next one. The next one is Oregon. Oregon.
Oregon is interesting because, of course, along the Pacific coast, they probably don't have temperatures that go much above 100. But meanwhile, if you're in the Columbia Basin, that's the area right on the opposite side of the Cascade Mountains, it could probably heat up very, very quickly. So I will say, I'm going to go with Dennis Cassia. Dennis Cassia said 117. That sounds good to me. 117.
Well, a very good guess. It is not quite there. Rich Rothmansky and Carol DeCara are very close at $1.20. And Frank Scalera is very close at $1.18. So that leaves us with Howard A., who got it right, 119.
That's the street right.
119.
That's the street where I lived when I was in Harlem. 119th Street.
119th Street. Yes, that's where I lived, 119th and 2nd.
Oh, I lived on 119 between Pleasant and First.
And I was on 119th on the
You mean to
Second
tell me,
Avenue side
Joe?
of
You
119th.
mean to tell me that all I had to do was just go one block
One block.
beyond First Avenue, and there you were?
Yep, there I was.
Oh,
No,
how do you like that?
You were closer to Holy Rosary.
Holy Rosary is right next door to where I was.
Yeah,
The
well,
church
was right next door. I don't know what they did
was.
with that.
Well,
Uh,
the edifice is still there, but they no longer are having any
and
masses there.
yeah, they don't have masses there. Next one is the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Well, we said yesterday, didn't we, that New York, or was it the day before in New York, the hottest temperature was 108?
Yes,
And what did we just
and
say now
Troy
for? And what did we just say now for the last state that we had?
for
Oregon
Oregon.
was
Oregon 119.
119. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go in between those two states. I'm going to say 113 for Pennsylvania.
You're too high. Not very high, but too high. Howard A., Rich Rothmansky have the correct answer at $1.11. 111.
111.
Yes. Uh, Rhode Island.
What state?
Rhode Island.
Oh, I don't know. 106.
You were very astute to go lower, but you didn't go low enough. Okay. Um, Justin Smith, you didn't go high enough. It's a triple digit. Joe Z is very close at 103, but the Croce and Mr. Cardillo, 104. And Kenny Salerno, 104. And William Uber, 104. That's the answers, folks, 104. And we're now up to the S's. South Carolina. South Carolina.
Uh,
Vincent
oh,
Croce wants you to
Vincent
ring the
Croce.
bell.
Vincent Croce wants the bell.
Bell.
I'm giving you the bell. There you go.
Bell. South Carolina.
118.
That's too high. Mark D 2042. Griller G at 114 and Josie at 114. You're close. I'm trying to see if anybody's got it yet. No, not yet. But getting close. Uh, 115 is a little too high. Chuck Cardillo, give Chuck Cardillo a bell ring, a buck 13, and
Hey,
also Mrs. Hutch and
there
Mr.
you go.
Croce. Don't forget
Mrs.
Mrs.
Hutch
Hutch.
too. Yeah.
113.
Yes.
All right. Any plans for the weekend?
Um, no, not really. My son is going to attempt to get his driveway sealed on Saturday, although I'm not sure if he's going to be able to do that with the way the weather is looking.
Yeah. Well, you do have that risk later in the day. You should do it on Sunday.
I don't think do they seal driveways on Sunday? Would you seal a driveway on Sunday?
No, I wouldn't. But you never know these days. Um, yeah.
What do you have planned?
Well, I have Saturday. I'm going to a friend of mine's house as they throw their fourth. I think it's the fourth annual Wings Wars party, which they usually do around the 4th of July. Contestants can bring wings, and they compete for the chicken trophy that is given to the winner. So that's always an exciting night, Joe, here in North Georgia. The Wing Wars. So I will be attending, and I will be one of the judges. Well, everybody who goes is a judge because we all get a vote. Although I
Oh,
have already made it I've already made it well known that I can be bought.
all right. Now,
If they,
if you share my screen,
oh,
I
okay.
know I've, I know I've told this story before, but for those who have never heard it, and we mentioned about the meteor at the very beginning of the show, which, and I posted this on Facebook today. I said, I know this story has been told before, but for those who have never heard it, a while back, my son, who teaches high school physics, commented that, quote, I graded over 400 copies of this year's physics Regents, questions 51 through 56 specifically. And it turns out that today in our society, when you take the Regents here in New York State, it is not corrected by your teacher, but it is sent out to be corrected by teachers from other school districts. But back in the day, and I talk about back when I was in high school or junior high school, your teacher was the one who graded all the papers in your class. And this reminded me of the occasion when I took the Earth Science Regents at Junior High School 101 in the Bronx. Earth Science was my very favorite subject. I had no qualms about taking the exam. In fact, I was so confident on the day before the exam, I remember relaxing in front of our TV watching an episode of The Adventures of Superman on Channel 11 with George Reeves, which is why I brought this image up for all of you. Now, for those of you in a certain age who could remember this particular episode, Nutty Professor Twiddle, who was played by actor Sterling Holloway. Sterling Holloway was the guy who did the voice of Winnie the Pooh in all of those Disney cartoons. He uses a time machine to send Clark, Lois, Jimmy, and Perry and himself back to 50,000 BC along with a notorious gangster. But then, in order to get back to the present, Professor Twiddle needs a very special kind of metal called carborium X, which apparently can only be found on asteroids. So Clark, of course, Clark Kent changes into Superman, finds an asteroid in space, comes back with a sample of carborium X, which the professor inserts in his time machine. Voila! Superman saved the day. So the next day, I take the Earth Science Regents. Again, I had watched this episode the night before. I had no problems with it, save for one question concerning geology. And I'd hated geology. I didn't like geology. I didn't understand why it had to be included in it. Well, of course, that deals with the Earth, right? And the question was, provide one example of a pyroclastic rock. Now, I probably could have taken an educated guess and gotten the answer right, but instead, I decided in that blank space to write Carborium X.
Oh,
So several days later, I'm walking through the hallways of my junior high school with my yearbook, getting autographs from friends and teachers, And as I passed Mr. Schemberg, my earth science teacher's uh, classroom, he's sitting there at his desk alone. So I strolled in to get his signature. As he signs my book, he says, "Well, Mr. Rayo, it certainly has been interesting to have you as a student." He then handed me the book. I shook his hand, started for the door, and suddenly he calls out, "Oh, Mr. Rayo, Mr. Rayo." When I returned to his desk, he said, "There was one question that you answered on the regions that I really didn't understand. Hold on for a minute." So then he opens his drawer, pulls out a stack of papers, quietly rifles through them, and then he finds mine. He quickly looks at my answer sheet and he says, "Yeah, here we go. Question 46. What the hell is Carborium X?" And looking at him with a straight face, I said, "Oh, Mr. Schemberg, Carborium X is a substance that's found only on asteroids, which can be used in time machines in order to go forward in time." Mr. Schemberg could only give me a blank stare, and then I continued, "I have to confess to you, Mr. Schemberg, that I realized right after I handed the exam back to you that I really shouldn't have put down Carborium X as an answer." "Oh, really?" he said. "And why is that?" "Well, you see," I said, "Carborium X is a metal, and a pyroclastic rock is probably wouldn't fall into that specific category, so I guess I got that question wrong." Well, the look on Mr. Schemberg's face was priceless. He slowly placed the stack of papers back in his drawer, shook his head in disbelief, shook my hand again, and said, "As I was saying, Mr. Rayo, it was interesting having you as a student, and good luck." And yes, folks, that was a true story. Da
Wow.
da.
I assumed you passed the regions.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Good. All right, folks. Everybody have a great weekend, and we will see you back on Sunday night at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. Good night, Joe.
Good night, Chet. Good night, David.